Last week we were talking about radical love, and we were talking about how in 2 Corinthians, despite what the Corinth church did to Paul, he went through his emotions, he suppressed them, and he still pressed in to this church. And we talked about Hosea. You remember that, how God called Hosea to do the unthinkable and go marry Gomer, who was a prostitute. And he went down this road, and God was demonstrating to him how he loved Israel. That no matter what they did to him, he was a faithful, faithful bride. And we talked about in church history how a plague broke out in the early days in 311 and 312. And what took place in that moment was the church stood up. And they said, we don't care that if we get sick, we don't care what happens to us. And they engaged in these cities in a way where off the lips of these people, it says the deeds were on everyone's lips. And they glorified the God of Christians because they stayed in these cities when everybody left. And they provided food for the sick and the poor and those who were dying. And they engaged. And I said, we are called to live radical love. A different love than the world has ever seen. And we talked about how Paul showed this radical love no matter how he's treated, no matter the fact that the Corinth church had turned their back on him, no matter how they criticized him, that they believed lies, that they abandoned him, that they were self-centered. He still loved them. He had every right to walk away, but he said, no, I'm going to love this church. Despite that, we talked last week that love speaks truth. Speaks truth. It doesn't hold back truth. It does it in gentleness and kindness. It's unloving and ungracious not to speak truth into people's lives. It just is. Right? If my house was on fire and my kids were downstairs playing video games, it would be unloving for me to be like, oh, they're having fun, and walk out the door and be like, go figure it out. I know you yell fire. Get out. Get out. Because that's truth. There's a fire in the home. And when you speak truth, it's a demonstration that you love and that you want to protect. We talked last week, love makes room in one's heart. If you truly love somebody, that makes room into a large heart where you see in 2 Corinthians, it's come in. You're welcome here. Every area of my life, you're welcome here. And that's the thing when we fell in love for the first time, or we fell in love and we're married, we let that person in our heart. And that's why when they do things, it hurts so deeply, right? We talked about last week, love doesn't pursue its own affections. And Paul's battling with the foreign church that they've allowed affections to squeeze him out, and that's kind of the terminology, like almost like how you squeeze out toothpaste. There's no room for Paul. And so many of us, we have these affections in our life, and what we have done essentially is we've taken our spouse and we've squeezed them out. We've taken our kids and we squeezed them out because we have this affection and we don't care what they have to go through as long as we get what we want. What we're pursuing, and you see that in kids all the time. It doesn't matter how chaotic they make the house. If they want something, they'll nag you to death, right? Right, parents? Can I get an amen? They're just, daddy, daddy, mommy, mommy. Daddy said yes, mommy said yes, and they play you like a fiddle. It's awful. And I said the deepest pain one could ever face in life is unreturned love. Where you love someone so deeply, and they've squeezed you out so far that it's good. And some of you have faced that in marriage. Some of you have faced that in parenting where your kids don't talk to you anymore. The next one we talked about last week, love is quick to repent. And so today, we're actually going to be in 1 Corinthians 13, majority of the morning. I'm going to refer back to 2 Corinthians in a second. But when you read 1 Corinthians, you see a broken church. They were suing each other. They were divided over specific teaching. They were immoral. They had pride. They were bragging about their spiritual gifts. They had violated communion. They were making a mockery of it. And Paul addresses that. They were stumbling. They were causing other Christians to stumble with their freedoms. They're like, I can do whatever I want. And then other Christians were falling into sin as a result of it. But in this moment, what we see all throughout the scriptures is this continual theme, New Testament, Old Testament, where God tells us to pursue love. That's our calling as Christians. If you want to demonstrate Christ well, you love well. And God doesn't look at the church that's unloving lightly. He doesn't look at it and say, you know what, you're representing me well. See, the church in our community should be the most loving place anybody ever steps foot in. And so when you look at this, Paul's pleading with them on a continual basis to love. You see, 1 John, the entire book is saying, if you don't love your brother, you don't love me. And so this theme throughout the Bible is just saying, like, do you love and do you love well? And some of you are like, I do. Well, when we go through 1 Corinthians 13, you're going to see, at least I did, a lot of times when I love well, it's because of selfish motives. It's normally about me. But let me give you emphasis on this of how instrumental this is in the New Testament. 1 Corinthians 16:14 says, let all you do be done with love. Everything you do it with love. Colossians 3:14, you're going to get the point in a second. Beyond all of this, everything I just mentioned in the book of Colossians, put on love. Put it on. Wear it. Be defined as a loving person. 1 Corinthians 14:1, it says, pursue love. Pursue it. Run towards it. Philippians 1:9, abound in love. Be overwhelmed with love. Let it fill your home. Let it fill your life. Hebrews 13:1 says, continue in love. You're doing a really good job right now, but continue. Fight for it. Be diligent with it. 1 Thessalonians 3:12 says, increase in love. And we got to get it a little bit better, right? We need more love in our life. 1 Peter 4:8 says, be fervent in love. Be determined in love. Philippians 2:2 says, maintain love. Hebrews 10:24 says, stimulate each other to love. Like, create a culture where love is the foundation. 2 Corinthians 8:8, be sincere in love. You get the point? We're going to keep going. 1 Timothy 1:5 says the goal of our instructions is love out of a pure heart. This is our goal why we teach you, that you love and you do it with a pure heart. See, when we look at 1 Corinthians 13, what you have to understand that in 1 Corinthians 13, it's different than the English where we have one word for love. We have one word. It kind of is, it loses its flavor because of that. So you say, oh, I love that dress. Do you? You love it? I love my house. You love it? Like, and you go on, I love my dog. And you go about it. I love my kids. Are you sure about that? But no, as you look at it, but in the English, it's just one word that really defines different things. But in the Greek, there's multiple words for love, like eros. It's this romantic love. It's this passionate love. It's this seductive love. And then you have other words in the Greek that mean like a friendship type love. But here, the word that we talk about in 1 Corinthians 13 and the one that really should define us is the Greek word eros. This word, when we look at it and we get to the meat of it, this is what it means. It means do good to those people around you. It's not about an action. It's not about an emotion. It is about literally looking inside of your life and sacrificing for them. It's an act of sacrificial love. And so, I think sometimes what we forget is that the choice. Like, so when we wake up in the morning and we have a choice we're going to make, am I going to love my wife well? Am I going to sacrifice her? Am I going to love my kids well? Am I going to sacrifice? We sacrifice for ourselves every day, all day. But what Paul is saying here, this love that we're talking about in 1 Corinthians 13 is not an emotion. When God says love your enemies, he's not saying I want you to feel emotional about your enemies, right? And I've heard people say this all the time, especially being a college pastor and a youth pastor. I just love her because of the way she makes me feel. And we think of love in a way of feeling. And those of you who have been married for a long time, yes, your wife still has that thing inside of you where she makes you feel. But it's moved deeper than that, right? I would assume, I hope so. It's more than a feeling. And those people who say, like, I love the way she makes me feel, or I love the way he makes me feel, what you're essentially saying is, I really love me. Right? I love how what it does to me. Like, she satisfies me in ways that makes me feel good about myself, right? And that's what you're saying. I love myself so much that it stirs this thing inside of me that is my passions and my desires. But this love that we're defining here is a sacrificial love. And if we define love as a feeling, it's the worst way to define it. And so in 7:2 of 2 Corinthians, Paul says, make room for me in your heart. We talked about this briefly last week. He goes, I haven't wronged you. I haven't done something unjustly to you. He says, just make room for me in your heart. I've never used you. And then we come into 1 Corinthians 13. What type of love is Paul talking about? So verse 4 of 1 Corinthians 13, and we're going to spend the next 2 weeks going through these words. First, love is patient. Love is patient. True sacrificial love is patient. This word means extremely patient. Patient with people. It defines a person who's slow to anger, who virtually never gets angry no matter how they're treated. This is crazy, right? It's, okay, I'm not going to respond. Even though you wronged me deeply, I'm going to be patient with you, and I'm not going to explode. I'm not going to retaliate. I'm not going to seek vengeance. I'm not going to be hostile. Is that normally our response with people? No. Right? We consider it, I've heard people say it's like a badge of honor, like, so-and-so did this to me, and I really lit into them. There's no honor in that. Anybody can spew from their heart nasty filth that hurts the individual. What is righteous, what is godly, is that no matter what is said, no matter what is done, and this is what we're talking about earlier, is we're patient with those individuals so they see the beauty of Jesus. It also means long-tempered or suffering long. It's like, how long do I have to suffer? It's perseverance. We tolerate whatever comes our way. And we see this with God in the entire Old Testament with the Jewish people, right? How patient is he with them? Time and time again, they're ungrateful. They're nasty. They're venomous. They say horrific things about God, and he's just patient. A famous atheist last century, Robert Ingersoll, said this. He'd get up on the debate stage. In order to make a mockery of God, he would be debating our apologists, and he would often stop in the middle of one of his lectures. When he was speaking against God, he would take out his watch. He put a timer for the audience. He says this, I'll give God 5 minutes to strike me dead for the things I've said. And he would stand there. The clock would go down. God never struck him dead. But it bothered a lot of people, and there was this pastor, Theodore Parker. He heard what this man said, and he said, did this gentleman think he could exhaust the patience of God in 5 minutes? Romans 2:4. The patience of God led you to repentance. I'm being serious here, church. Is your patience exhausted? 2 minutes? 1 minute? When we react to our kids or our husband in a way where, yeah, you might have every reason to retaliate, every reason to get upset and angry. You have an opportunity in those moments, rather than respond, you have an opportunity to understand and listen. Right? Like, why are you acting this way? Why are you so upset? Why are you constantly coming to this angle, and instead of responding with your words and your actions and, oh, I'm done, like, and you just put the hammer down? Why don't we try as husbands to live with our wives in an understanding way? Why don't we give them more than 5 minutes? Like, right? God gave you more than 5 minutes. He gave me more than 5 minutes. He has been ridiculously patient with me all the days of my life. Does he not? And so why, all of a sudden, when life begins to go awry in our homes and in our marriage, we forget that it's God's patience that led us to a place where we repented. Why are we not patient with our spouse and our kids and our neighbors and our coworkers? And that is a question we must ask. And if we want to represent our God well, I think it starts with patience. I think you see people as a soul that matters. You see that they bring baggage to the table, that they have hurts, they have scars, they have struggles. And when we endure that, and we look at it, we consider the beauty of Jesus. He says this in the next one: love is patient. I love this. Love is kind. This is not a friendly attitude. This word kind means useful. I found that very intriguing. Let me give an illustration for this. There was a commentary I was reading that he used this illustration. I thought it was beautiful. There are two men coming on a precipice of a cliff, and the rock walls behind them, and they had to walk sideways, and they were coming from opposite directions, and if they made one wrong move, they would fall to their death. But when they come around the curve, both of them meet each other, and they do everything possible to get around each other, but they can't. They're just in each other's way. So they begin to talk, and this goes with this word. Well, the one man said, there's only one way we can solve this. And he lays on the ground and allows the other man to walk on him in order to get to the other side. He brushes off the dirt and he stands up. So what does it have to do with kindness? Oftentimes we get into situations where I want to go there, but I can't. You want to go here, but you can't. I'm going to be useful. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to get in my own way. I'm not going to say this is my right. I was here first. You're useful. And so think about this. You get in situations where your kids are truly upset. Your wife is truly upset. Maybe the most useful thing you can do is listen. Maybe the most useful thing you can do when you see that they're hurt is to comfort them. Maybe the most useful thing you can do when they're discouraged to encourage them. Maybe the most useful thing you can do when they're struggling is to walk with them. That's what kindness is. It's the Good Samaritan. I see this man I don't know. I have the financial means to help. I have the wherewithal to help. I have the ability to help. I'm not going to just pray over him. I'm going to throw him on my animal and be useful. And so here's the question. Are you useful? Like, are you always going into situations with people and you see a need and you say, God, use me? Right? Or you walk in the home and your wife is at wit ends and the kids have been just a disaster all day, and instead of just saying, hey, what'd you do all day? You go, hey, babes, what do you need from me? What type of service can I give you in order for us to get through this evening to show that I love you? And if we approach things that way, where we see someone in their desk and they're crying, or we see someone having a bad week, or I mean, just the other day, I'm not on social media, my wife sent me a screenshot of one of my old college students, and he said, God, will you please take me? I have no reason to live. I say, let's send him a message and tell him to give me a call. But so many people just look past that, never reach out. As Christians, we're called to be useful. The last one I want to talk about, and I'm already over time, is love is jealous. Love is not jealous. And this is the first of 9 negatives. And this word means to boil over, and it's referred to self-passions, jealousy. And so I was looking at this, like, how does jealousy play out in relationships? I don't feel like I'm a very jealous person, but as I went through the Old Testament, from the very beginning, Satan said to Eve, would you like to be like who? God. Boom, jealousy. The second one, Cain killed Abel because of what? Jealousy. You go on. Joseph was sold into slavery because of jealousy. Right? You can go into the New Testament. The prodigal son comes home, and what happens? The older brother won't even come in. He's like, you killed the fatted calf. Jealousy. Proverbs 27:4 says that wrath is cruel, anger is outrageous, but who is able to stand before jealousy? And I started asking myself, how does this pan out in my life? I played sports my whole life. But if you ever were a second stringer, what did you want to happen to that guy who started in front of you? You say, oh man, like, I'm going to be a good teammate, I'm going to cheer him on, but you're really like, tear your ACL. Like, go down. Like, why are your parents so athletic? Right? You have this, there's this thing inside of you that's competitive. Maybe that's just me, right? When I was younger, people would be like, man, this pastor, this youth pastor's really good. Can you at least listen to his sermon? You listen to it, he's not that good. Right? You want to check whether you struggle with jealousy, right? Have someone in the same field as you succeed when you don't. What happens to your heart? Oscar Wilde told this story of a man, an old man, and he went out to the desert because of Libya, and he wanted to serve God at a parish out there. And the devil was crossing, this is a mystical story, crossing the Liberian desert, and he came across and met a whole pile of demons who were working hard to make this old saint fail, to sin. He had been sent there and set aside by the church. And out in the middle of the Liberian desert, these demons are coming at him. He left everything in order to serve Jesus. And the demons were coming at him with outrageous temptations, going at him full bore. And Satan watched. And he got sick of it. And Satan said to them, he's resisted all your temptations, hasn't he? Without success. We have had no success with you. And Satan says, can I give it a shot? And the devil came up to the man and whispered in his ear, your brother has just made Archbishop of Alexandria. And a scowl of malignant jealousy crossed his face. He said, this is the type of sin I recommend. We try to fight all these other sins in our life. The big ones. but our hearts are full of jealousy. Right? Hey, my parents love my sister more. Look what they do for her all the time. My dad plays favorites. And you go about that from when you're a child. Right? Like your husband gets success and you're just at home grinding, being a homemaker, and you're like, look, he gets to go out and be with, and go to work every day, and I'm just here toiling with the kids. Or you don't have success in your profession and someone else does. And we can go about how jealousy works itself out. Like women's insecurities all the time flare up as a result of jealousy. Look how pretty she is. And she talks to your husband and you're like, don't talk to her ever again. I'll kill you. Right? You look on social media and you see all these people and what they're doing with their life. And you're like, what have I done? And jealousy begins to creep in your heart. And you're not content with where God has you and what He's given you, and you're constantly looking to be like the Joneses. But here, I need to land this. When you love somebody, you wish they had everything. You wish they were blessed. You wish they had all the good things, and you're happy for them. Isn't that how Christ behaved? When you look at him, he says this, I came not to seek my own glory, but what? The glory of him who sent me. I didn't come for me. I'm doing it all for him. He said, I'm content not to be ministered unto, but what? To minister and give my life a ransom for many. Jesus was never jealous. He knew what he was going to have to face. And he loved you enough to do it. And so when we look at this morning, we're going to take communion. And my question is this to you. Do you love well? I said this last week, and I hope you take it seriously. And I'm going to ask the men who are going to take communion to go ahead and move into position. Matthew 5:23-24 says, if you are offering your gift at the altar, remember that your brother has something against you. Leave your gift there before the altar and go and first be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Relationships matter. And so we're about to go into a place where we're going to take communion. 1 Corinthians 11 says this, whoever therefore eats the bread and drinks the cup of the Lord in an unworthy manner will be guilty concerning the body and the blood of the Lord. Let each person examine himself and eat of the bread and drink of the cup. For anyone who eats and drinks without discerning the body eats and drinks judgment on himself. Don't make a mockery of this. I need you to look in your heart. If there are broken relationships in your life, if you need to go to your wife and say, I haven't loved you well, I've been pretty selfish. I'm jealous. I'm not kind. Like when I come home, I'm not trying to be a vessel in order to serve you. I'm really about me. Like, why is this dirty? Why is this unclean? Why is there not food on the table? Why are the children this way? Da-da-da-da. And we go down the list and we're always nitpicking at the individual. We're not truly kind. And I know a lot of us need to confess about patience. I know that. Like we live in a culture where a Happy Meal takes 3 minutes and we're angry, right? Like let's be honest, we're impatient individuals, and that overflows into our loved ones. We're not patient with their sanctification. We're not patient with our kids. What I don't want your kids to think is that they're a burden to you. Right? They can't bother dad. They can't bother mom. Like they're just a burden. Like they're a gift. Your wife's a gift. You're a gift. Your kids are a gift. People matter. And so when we come to communion this morning, we need to realize that they matter so much that Jesus did what? He died for the world. The wretched, the broken, the vile, you and me. So when we come, yeah, there's people in our life that messed up, really jacked up. So are you. So am I. But we're to love them so they see Jesus. Because that's what we're here for. And I will hammer this point home until I retire. You're here for one reason, and one reason only, to be an ambassador of Jesus Christ. And he died for you to be that ambassador. And so when we take communion this morning, do not do it unless relationships are made right. Put it in your pockets. Put it in your car. Your phone. But this matters. And I'm saying it because I love you. Because I don't want you to have regret. I said it 2 weeks ago. I'm tired of standing at funerals and watching people weeping because I wish I would have said this. I wish I would have done this. So here we are. I want you to bow your head and close your eyes. Randy, will you pray? They pass communion. They're going to pass the bread first, which represents the body of Jesus Christ. If you want to come to the altar, make your way. Go ahead. If you need prayer, just raise your hand, and I have people here ready to pray. So I just want you to bow your head and close your eyes. Spend time talking to God. So if you need prayer, just put your hand up.